And welcome back to the number one podcast in the sport where we've had professional boxing, amateur boxing, we've had everything, right? And now we're firmly in the realm of granddad boxing, where careers are being extended by any which way, and there are a number of factors behind that. But I want you to go from back to front on this topic, because obviously we've all seen, Joe Joyce, Derek sort of did their thing on Saturday night, and kudos to them. Manny's come back out for another run. Floyd's seeing what's happening as well, and he's got his fight with John Gotti III. And it forced me to ask a question. This is a question for everyone listening as well. When do you tell someone to stop doing what they love? When do you say to somebody, I think you should pack it in? And the reason I say that is they can always wheel out Fleetwood Mac and people show up. They can wheel out the Rolling Stones and people show up. Paul McCartney does the gig, people show up. Jay-Z raps for the great and the good of American society and they show up. Whereas in boxing, we tell people it's time for you to go. It's time for you to call it a day. And people say, yeah, but health reasons and all of that. Those guys in the Rolling Stones did a lot of damage to their bodies. It's well documented. It's also well documented that touring is an inherently stressful activity on the body as well, especially when you're 80. So all of that to say, the only person that where we've quite reasonably said, maybe you should stop is Joe Biden. And for no other reason than you don't want that guy anywhere near that red button because it could get pressed. When you're calling your vice president Trump and all sorts of things, yeah, maybe the nuclear button isn't the right place for you to be. But just to come back to Joyce versus Chisora, what we saw was a good fight. I'm not going to say it was fight of the year because neither of those guys is at that level, unfortunately. But we saw two tough men, and I think in Derek's case, a really, really hard man, give their all for 10 rounds. But the fact that it was 10 rounds should tell you that these guys are closer to the end than the beginning. And they know that themselves. But I don't think it should be for us as boxing fans to tell them, maybe you should pack it in. And we always hide behind this thing like, we really care for you, we really care for you. I don't think it comes from that place. It seems to come from a place of, I know what's best for you because I'm an expert in this. And it's once again, as fans being experts. I've always found that the people in the sport that you talk to about retirement are usually around the same theme. They just didn't want to do the camps anymore. All these guys would box all day. If Derek could box once a week for decent money, he would. If Joe could do it, he would. All these guys would do that. But the camps, the getting up in the morning to run, the having to do the sparring, the strength and conditioning, the diet, all of that stuff there, they don't enjoy that. And when that becomes a chore, that's normally when people retire. People very rarely retire because they don't want to get hit anymore. And I think we should always remember that when you tell someone to stop, deep down you don't care what they do next. Because it's not your concern. You're not going to pay their bills. And I've seen too many guys in boxing end up with nothing. Because they listen to people who said you should pack it in. And they're like, I can sell my name a few more times. Make sure I'm secure and I'm looked after. And no one should be stopped from doing that because we don't stop people in other walks of life. I remember when I did my law work experience. And it was like the fox hunting debate about, taking this to the House of Lords. And the guy they brought out to handle this case was, I'm going to say Sidney Kendridge. You could be Stanley, but I'm going to say Sidney Kendridge, right? And he would have been 80-something when he did this case. And he was the lawyer for Nelson Mandela when Mandela got locked up. So I had to question his credentials at that point and go, are you really the guy to manage this case? But a well-respected lawyer. And all he did is say, look, I'm never going to stop practicing. I just pick and choose my cases. I do the stuff that excites me and interests me. Let's not tell people to stop doing what they love, because we don't pay their bills. We don't want to pay their bills. And we don't want to be responsible for the mental health implications of it. I look at a guy like Robin Reed. I don't know if anyone remembers that Tris Dixon interview he did. And it was just minute after minute of heartbreak. And you could see if he could just go back and have one last run, he would. And that's a guy who ran deep into his career, and he still misses it. That's why we need to be cautious about, telling people to pack it in. I think, yeah, we should. We should just pause and go, okay, what's he going to do? After he packs it in, what's he going to do? Sometimes we don't want to know the answer to that. But look, let's now talk about the in-ring stuff. And Joyce versus Chisora wasn't a disappointment. It was a very strange fight, because I'm not sure if Derek looked better or if Joe made him look better. But Derek was able to avoid punches Joseph Parker couldn't. Ian Lewison couldn't. Do you know what I mean? Like, Brian Jennings couldn't. Derek was able to avoid these shots. And like, this is a 40-year-old Derek. Now, is that a Joe decline, or is that just Derek knowing his way around the ring? And then in reverse, like, Joe had to deal with someone very, very different from what Joe's used to. So if you look at Joe's background, and just for context, let's remember this. When Derek made his debut in 2007, Joe hadn't laced up a pair of gloves. Joe was probably cheerleading, capoeira, I have no idea, but he definitely wasn't lacing up a pair of gloves. That's how deep Derek is in this game. But what Joe's been used to are very conventional boxers who give him very, very basic problems to solve, right? And what people find when they get in with Derek is nothing about Derek's conventional. The positions he takes up, not conventional. The shots he throws aren't conventional. They don't make a lot of sense. Yes, he throws punches carrying a lot of risk, because there's a risk that he could get countered and dropped. But he can also catch you. Joe found that out in round number 9. Carlos Takam found that out in round number 8. Derek can catch you. And it's not like Derek's got superhuman power, but he's a big, heavy man. And if he hits you, it's going to take a lot for you to recover from that. And so you're watching this fight, and it's Joe. And it's Joe being Joe. It's Joe being the juggernaut, but without the self-belief he used to have. The style Joe had is predicated on one thing above all else. You have to believe you're indestructible. You have to believe you can walk through anybody. And in the back of Joe's mind, he's got 2 fights where he couldn't walk through someone. I think if Joe fights Derek before Zhang, I think he stops him. And I think the conversation is then about Derek stopping, right? And I think that Derek would have got the same treatment Joseph Parker did. I think this Joe Joyce post Zhang took something out of him. That delusion that all top boxers need. Yeah, Joshua needs it, Wilder needs it, Fury needs it. When it goes, they become completely different animals. Isn't it always interesting that there's this arc in boxers, isn't there, where when they're undefeated, they're taking heads off, and they look super impressive, and everything looks incredible. No matter the level, they're still taking heads off. And then they get that first defeat, and suddenly that gung-ho energy, it dials down a bit. It calms down. You know, I always say that, like, they hide it behind, you know, I had to be smarter in the ring, but it's not that you had to be smart, it's that you're more hesitant. In the same way that, you remember when we first had foreign players coming to the Premier League, and they'd normally come at the tail end of their career like Ruud Gullit. And so they weren't as fast as they used to be, and they sort of stroll around the pitch. And we always used to think that was cultured and sophisticated. Look at him. He's just walking around finding the right spaces to occupy. It's like, well, no, he's just slow. And it's the same in boxing. It's just slow. But there's no point in talking about tactics with these two because it is just war games. Joe was never going to keep it long. Joe didn't have it in him to keep it long. Derek was going to be Derek. What surprised me with Joe was there were no uppercuts. There were a couple here and there, but there weren't uppercuts. But then I also remember Joe's never been an uppercut sort of guy. Joe is very much big 1-2s, big left hooks, and that's normally been enough. But when you don't believe, and Joe doesn't believe at the moment, and Joe's got to get that belief back. When you don't believe, it's not like you're 95% of the fighter you were, you're 50% of the fighter you were. So now Joe's got to go on that redemption arc that Daniel Dubois had to go on, that Derek's been on over and over and over and over again. Just for context, right? When Joe made his debut, I'm sure this is when Derek was in the Caballel phase, where he was fighting guys like Caballel and Filipovic, and we were like, Derek's just here for a payday. And people were saying Derek should retire then. People were saying Derek was finished then. And Derek's had this whole third act to his career where he's probably made more money in the last few years than he had in his whole career. And you know that because he's changing trainers, he's changing managers, he's keeping everyone on the bare minimum because you can see he's stacking that retirement fund up. So when people say, let's write Joe Joyce off, just remember, Derek was in a similar position 7 years ago and he still managed to extend it. If Joe can find that self-belief, if Joe can find something in himself, if Joe can look inside of himself and remember he's the damn juggernaut, there's still something in there. Because, and here's the uncomfortable truth, I think Joe's one of the few guys that did it clean. Because his career reflects someone who did it clean. Because we're seeing the decline at the time that we'd expect to see the decline. Whereas everyone else seems to be carrying on and extending or coming back. And we're like, how are they doing this? Joe seems to be the only guy who has literally done this on tuna noodles and Bovril. So let's give him a round of applause for that, for being one of the honest guys in boxing, you know. Now, does he go to the dark side? I wouldn't be mad if he did because he wouldn't be the only one, right? Let's be honest. He won't be the only one. You know, jump into a fight with Wilder, see what's left, get it cracking. Actually, having said that, I'd quite like to see that. Because both men have self-belief issues. Both men need to rediscover what made them special. Because not that they were one-trick ponies, but they had superpowers. Joe's superpower was his chin. His engine was cool, but it was his chin. Because he walked through hell to stop people. And Wilder's superpower was that punch. And both men need to remember what made them special. But look, for a Saturday night fight, I thought that was really good. And that's kind of what we have to get used to. We're going to get the big ones on pay-per-view. We're going to get the big ones in Saudi. This is kind of what we're getting now. Do you know what I mean? You get the fine dining on pay-per-view. This might be your, I don't know, Banana Tree, Giraffe, Nando's. That's what we're getting here. And then when you go down the levels, it's Morley's, it's Chicken Kitchen. Oh, Chicken Kitchen's underrated, by the way. If anyone's ever been to a Chicken Kitchen, best macaroni cheese in London by a long, long way. Now, in terms of what Derek does next, I think this lane he's occupied is cool. I don't think he needs to do anything more than he's doing now. Rematch with Dillian. If it's drug tested, would we want to see it? Or as Derek said, let them take the same stuff. Who's gonna test them really? No one. So let them take the same stuff, get it done, let's get entertained, make those guys a bit of money and move on. Or, based on what we saw on Saturday, do you put him in with Tony Yoka? I think that's a hard fight for Yoka, to be honest with you. But it'd be interesting to have Yoka with Don Charles in his corner against Derek. Because they're all still pretty close. Obviously, George Fox, who's Don Charles' son, is still close to Derek. They've known each other since, George was a kid. But all those sorts of things are in play for Derek for me. They're entertaining fights. They're not fights that you're going to pay for necessarily, but they're fights that you could watch on TV. They make sense from a televised perspective, and they're like value boxing reality. So I'd like to see Derek carry on. So ideally, maybe 48's Dillian, 49 becomes Tony Yoka, 49 becomes Dillian White, and 50 becomes Tony Yoka. If I'm Joe, who am I looking at? I'd fight Fraser Clark. If I need a couple of 10 rounders to get my confidence up, jumping with Fraser Clark, there's natural needle between those two. I think Fraser's as tough as they come. And I think Joe, needs that sort of test, someone who knows him, the skill level be high. So why not get that cracking? And then we'll find out where both men are. And I don't think a defeat hurts either guy. So those sorts of fights I think make sense. But if we're talking about old heavyweights, let's talk about the future. And in Moses Atalma, we have a young heavyweight who could be Joe's son or he could be Derek's son. He's young enough. And so he fights Marius Vac, which doesn't have the meaning it used to have. It doesn't have the meaning it had 7-8 years ago, to be fair. He was old then. He's definitely old now. But sometimes with a young guy like Moses, you got to let him loose. You got to let him loose on someone who's there to be hit so he can work these things out. He can work out the kinks in his attack. And he did. I get why he needed to do that in 2 rounds and make it look spectacular. I would have probably rather he did a bit less and extended the fight a bit more just to give Marius an opportunity to test him. See, at this stage in Moses Atalma's career, he just needs to see different situations. Yeah? No one's going to push him for a title just yet. He needs to see loads of different situations, understand what they are, overcome them, bank the experience. Bombing people out in 2 and 3 rounds isn't going to help him. We saw this with Daniel Dubois, and we realized Dubois needed more rounds before he fought Joe Joyce. And that would have served him in good stead. I think equally true in the case of when he fought Usyk. He probably suffered from a lack of rounds. And you don't want to see that with Moses Atalma. And you imagine Moses is in a camp that's got Jamie Shakiva, Alois Jr., these are all big guys, Fabio Wardley, Anthony Joshua, and a revolving cast of other heavyweights who come down to train. So he's going to get that experience of seeing how different styles deal with different problems. He's going to get that. But you want that in those 10-ounce gloves. Now, I've been high on Moses Atalma, but can we just pause for a second? If you followed this pod, how many years did I say Anthony Joshua needs to get an industrial unit, put a ring in there and some bags and some equipment, and just get all the local big men in there so he can train around them? And I said, this is how Joshua rediscovers his love for boxing. And ironically, Ben Davidson's done that for him. Now, I'm not going to claim the credit for that, although I should, but it's good to see that problems are being solved. And I think in this environment, Moses Atalma will thrive. When he comes in and knows there are people in there that have boxed at the top level and he can learn off them. And there are young, hungry guys like Alois Jr. who are ready to do whatever. So there's a lot going for Moses Atalma. I just have those nagging questions, which I'd always have over anyone. What's he going to do when someone doesn't fall over? And what's he going to do when someone hits back? There's a third question, which is, how long can his body sustain that style for? Because he was very, very voluminous. I'm going to be like Spencer Fearon, just using words with no context. Very voluminous in the punches he threw, right? So let's look at it. He was, I've heard people say it was Pacquiao-esque, and it was. He was just on him. He was just on Marius Vac. But to train for that style at the weight he is, like 1710 or whatever it is he is, to train for that style at his weight is going to be very hard on the lower back, very hard on the hips, very hard on the knees. So how do you manage that? Because there's only so much mileage your body can accumulate, and you don't want to be doing that in your early years. We saw it with Mike Tyson. We've seen it with Ricky Hatton, where that does happen. Now, Moses doesn't live that lifestyle, which is good, but he's still a big guy, throwing fast punches in large numbers. So his training team will manage his load accordingly, I'm sure. But just longer term, does he need to learn to do more with less? It's always a smarter approach, but right now I like what he's doing because it's offering a new look to the heavyweight division, because I've said for a while the future of the heavyweight division will be guys between 6'3" and 6'5" with a high work rate. I think that's where boxing needs to go. I get tired of these guys just throwing 1-2s because everyone trains for 1-2s. Very few heavyweights train for someone who's coming at them, throwing 4 and 5 punch combinations. That's how you win. That's how you beat guys like Johnny Fisher. Just outwork them. Tank will empty in 2 rounds max. And then you'll just have them slugging. And then that's when you can start to pick them off. But excited. I think Frank and Francis Warren have a good guy in Moses Atma. Not sure what's happened with his brother. Like, his brother doesn't seem to be as prominent as he once was. It's a shame that Willie Hutchinson's taking that space. But I'd like to see Carroll come back. I don't know what's gone wrong there, but hopefully he can come back and, you know, show us how talented he really is. What else happened on that card? Dennis McCann beat Yonat Baluta. Is that how you say his name? I don't know. What does that fight tell us? Or what does that fight really, really tell us? Not much. One thing we know is I don't know if Dennis could go to featherweight. I think super bantam's kind of the top end for him, maybe even bantamweight. But the options he has at 122, pretty limited, aren't they? Unless you draw someone up like a Tommy Franco or a Charlie Edwards and draw them up to super bantam to fight him. And I think those are hard nights' work for him because Balut is quite basic. So he's a guy that isn't going to set traps for you, isn't going to read what you're doing. So you're normally okay around those sorts of guys, man. It's not hard. It shouldn't be a hard day at the office. And the fact that it was the first time around was the concern. So you look at Dennis and go, what do you do next if you're Dennis McCann? Do you fight a Liam Davis? I don't think you do. I think you sit it out and you go, right, let me fight Michael Conlan. That's what I think will happen next. They'll have Dennis McCann versus Michael Conlan. And it will just be about what's left in Conlan and can he cause McCann enough trouble to help him develop. But someone asked me this question. They said, what level is Dennis McCann? And I said, he's not going to win a world title. Based on what we've seen so far, Dennis McCann won't win a world title. And it's not a lack of talent as far as I'm concerned. I don't know if he's got that top-end pop that he needs. I just have a feeling that when he gets to, you know, those sorts of guys, and he will box at featherweight. So when he gets to those Mexicans, they'll be waiting for him. And as we've seen time and time again with Brits, when they jump in with those Mexicans, Hondurans, Panamanians, Nicaraguans, it gets rough for them. And I can't explain why, but it gets pretty rough for them, and it's more likely to be a defeat than a win. So I think you just keep Dennis in this kind of domestic mix for now. Let him avoid Liam Davis. I don't know if he wants to get hit by Liam Davis because Liam's on a hell of a roll at the moment. But that's probably how I'd look at it right now. I think McCann's done all right. I'm glad he's got this monkey off his back. But it can be hard to match him now because he can't take another defeat in his career. So you put him in with a Conlan and just see what Michael Conlan can get out of him. So let's touch on another guy who's got problems. And it's a shame, really, because I really like Archie Shar. I think there are bits of Archie Sharp that are an incredible boxer, and there are bits of Archie Sharp where if I was his trainer, I'd just be banging my head against the nearest door. And Ryan Garner exposed that. Archie went from, I'm just going to box him, make him miss, make him pay, and you're thinking, okay, cool. Box yourself to a decision, I get that. And then he goes through a phase of, no, I'm just going to sit here and trade with him. And I'm like, I don't know if you're good at both of these things. Like, I don't know. I don't know if you're better than Ryan Garner at both of these things. I believe you're better at punching and moving. I don't know if you're better at going to war than Ryan Garner. And the evidence showed. Now, all this Roy Jones this, Roy Jones that, Archie Sharp is still Archie Sharp. That's the Eddie Lamb Archie Sharp. That's the Amigos Archie Sharp. That's the Richard Sawyer Archie Sharp. The frustrating Archie Sharp, right? Where you're like, mate, who are you listening to? Like the voices in your head. I have no idea. Like I'm watching him with my coach's head on going, Archie, who do you listen to? Do you just want to box your way? Because if you want to box your way, just be honest and admit it. Because he should be better than he is now. There should have been an Archie Shar, Joe Cordina showdown by now. He's at that level, talent-wise. And it's worth remembering, there was a time when, if you look at Southeast London, like I call it like the Millwall Derby, right? And the Millwall Derby was Ted Cheeseman for kind of the inner part of Southeast London. So like New Cross, Bermondsey, whatever, right? And Archie Shar was the poster boy for the outer part of Southeast London, like your Lee, Mottingham, not Grove Park. Well, yeah, Grove Park will do. Downham. And that was Archie's kind of, fan base. And so those guys boxing the amateurs, I think Archie beat him. And they were expected to be the guys who now are top of the tree, and both are flattered to deceive. And I've talked about the Southeast London problem in the previous episode. It's worth a listen, but I think the same issues apply here. That just don't produce guys that are good enough. And I don't know what Archie Shar does next, because he's running out of options. Does he get the Mick Conlan fight? I have no idea. But I just don't know what you do with him. Because it seems he's determined to box a certain way, and it's been that way with every trainer he's had. So you almost look at it and go, the trainers have had zero net benefit, which is odd, because I know how good the trainers around him are. So I think Archie's got to have some hard words with himself about who he is in that boxing ring and what he wants to do. Because if he wants to be the stick and move guy, fair enough. Be the stick and move guy. But he hasn't got the power to be the trench warrior. It's not like, and I don't know if he's got the chin and the power to do that, but I know he's got the skills to do the stick and move, and maybe that's his route to a world title. Sorry guys, to be fair, that's probably all I'll touch on the TNT card. A couple of things I did enjoy. Prelims are good. Dev did his thing. Alois Jr., smart kid. Love seeing him on the camera, in front of the camera. And he'll have a good future. I said the same about Denzel. Alois is the same, because he's a smart kid and he's a witty kid. And here's the thing that he's got. Because his boxing journey really started with him boxing 3 years above. Like, he was with the seniors when he was 14, 15. And we know when you were the kid in the room, you develop a thick skin and you develop a sharp mind, because you got to come back with lines when people are giving you a hard time. So he'll always be an engaging listen, because he's witty, he's sharp, he's smart, he sees things quick, and he knows his boxing. Oh my God, he knows his boxing. So I'm happy to see these guys getting a platform. I just hope they're smart enough to turn it into something else afterwards, man. Always have multiple strings to your bow. But yeah, I think I tweeted this on Saturday. Those are the kinds of shows that we're going to get on TV now. We're not going to get the superstars for free anymore. As long as we can make our peace with that, we'll be all good. And I guess that's why people buy the flaming sticks. Do you know what? I still have a chance of keeping this one relatively short, so give you guys some time back. So I'm just going to fly through some of the news that maybe I missed or has happened recently, and just touching it, quick opinions, and move on. I wanted to talk about George Groves and James Gale. If you remember, there was a picture of them on the King's Road, which we thought was impromptu, but it turned out it was kind of planned. Whatever, don't mind that. But they build up this anticipation for a podcast, and they get that guy Declan, whoever Declan is, I have no idea who he is. And he sits in the middle of these two and proceeds to give us nothing we didn't already know. And I'm confused. Like, why would you have those two, maybe the most bitter rivals in boxing? No, there's other stuff like AJ and Dillian, but that's not the same. Like, you've got George Groves and James Gale, two men that split a boxing club. Because I think at one point it was Mickey Delaney with George and Stevie Newland with James. And so you had two camps inside the Dale Youth. And from what I saw as an outsider looking in, once you had that split, Dale Youth took years to recover from that, because it apparently wasn't the best place to be. But, you move on. So there's all of this stuff and we got none of it. I can guarantee if I'd sat between those two, we would have created the greatest podcast that boxing has seen. Because I genuinely want to get under the skin of why those two don't get along. We still don't know what triggered it. We don't know who was on whose side in the camp. We don't know anything. And those guys sat there for half an hour just saying nothing. Like, it was a terrible idea because really James didn't want to go into it and George didn't want to probe. And then here was the saddest thing. They bought views for it. Because I know what the number was when I watched it. And I was like, oh, this is disappointing. Like, I will do more views talking about this episode than they will recording it. And they're on YouTube and I'm not. That's how bad the numbers were when I jumped on. And then it went from that to 46K. And I'm like, how? And then it stayed on 46K for ages. I was like, well, that's odd. Why would it do that? Almost like 46,000 people at the same time decided, oh, we're all going to go and watch this. No build-up, no promo. Remember this, no build-up, no promo. No one pointed to it. I don't remember there being a link to click. I don't remember there being much in the way of like short-form content that led to it. None of that. That's the worst thing. That shouldn't have needed any boosting. If they'd done that properly, that should have done 5-10 million views. But I come back to this old adage. Just because you own the underlying IP behind the content doesn't mean you should create it. Sometimes you got to just leave these things to people that have done it. And I wish they had. I wish they just said, listen, this Declan guy is cool from a journalistic perspective, but the fans don't want that. What the fans want is someone that's going to get to the bottom of why these guys don't get along, where they're at today, and what the future holds. Is James Gale going to buy a house in Isleworth just to annoy George? I don't know. What an odd place to live, though. Isleworth. Of all the places to live, Isleworth. Well, who knows? I don't know. But that just felt like a damn squib to me. And that's a real shame because we don't have many genuine rivalries, as in from kids all the way up, like you had with Rod Douglas and Michael Watson, Nigel Benn. Those sort of rivalries where guys come up together. There aren't many of those. So when you get them, you got to maximize them. Like no one's done the Roy Jones Antonio Tarver one yet. No one's done that. That's probably the last great, like, we want to get to the bottom of this one too. I don't know if you'll ever see that, but it's a real shame that it hasn't happened. Jesus, Manny Pacquiao came out of retirement to, I don't even know who he fought, man. I don't know, it looked like he fought Ryu from Street Fighter 2. And Manny looked like a 45-year-old Manny. And which, for the record, isn't a bad thing. Like, that version of Pacquiao, and I can't tell you what he weighed in at, but that version of Pacquiao beats a lot of people right now. And I don't say that with any joy, by the way. That just tells you how bad the standard of athlete is in 2024. But Manny Pacquiao right now, let's just assume Manny was at 154. What would he win now? He'd win the British title. Based on what I saw yesterday, he'd win the British title. Yeah, we could probably stop someone still. If he was at welterweight, win the British title. At 45 years old. The problem is at that weight, when you get to world level, it's just monsters. You got to think no one's even talking about Jamal Charlo. Those guys like Jamal Charlo, Tim Tszyu, Castano, Fundora. Now, you wouldn't want Manny in the mix there. Crawford's up there now. Spence might go up there. You don't want him in the mix. Manny versus Boots? Nah, I don't want to see that. Manny versus a properly tested Conor Benn? Maybe. Why not? Gigs. Shits and gigs. But, yeah, that Manny coming back in an exhibition just points to one thing, doesn't it? Let's be honest. It points to one thing. And this might be both men's introduction to the world of Turkey. Because can you imagine, just saying this now, can you imagine Riyadh season? Mayweather Pacquiao. Even if it's 8 rounds, right? Even if it's 8 3-minute rounds, Mayweather Pacquiao. Let's go. And there's none of this, I should have fought him in his prime. Both guys are past their prime now. But let's see if they can summon up that rivalry one last time. And then, then the winner gets Oscar. But no, I'm being deadly serious. I can see the direction of travel being Manny versus Floyd, because nothing else matters. If Manny fought for a world title, he'd probably lose. And then what? For very little money. But if he fights Mayweather, man, if he even fought Conor McGregor, the world's his oyster. So I don't know how I feel. Like, if Manny stays in the exhibition lane, I don't mind him doing it. I just don't want to see him come back and fight in what I call mainstream pro boxing. It doesn't work for him, financially or legacy-wise. We don't. Now, we've got YouTube. We know how great you were. We don't need reminding. You know, but as I say, good luck to these guys. I'm not here to tell anyone when to stop, because, like I said, I don't have to deal with what happens after they stop. But mental, just seeing Ryan Garcia in there, like someone needs to lock him up for his own good. Like, he needs to lock himself away, dry out, get his mind right, and focus on what's important to him. Because, like, I think if this carries on into September, October time, I think his time as a viable boxing prospect is done. Like, he's become the West Coast version of Adrian Broner. Oh, what else have we got? We've got Canelo versus Edgar Berlanga. Yeah, that's on the zone. So I don't get where the game is right now. PBC on the zone, PBC on Amazon. Turkey looks like he's going to take a significant stake in the zone. Yeah, mate, boxing's in a really weird place, because I'm watching this. Like, Turkey is essentially, he's on everyone's neck apart from Al Heyman. But it's only a matter of time. It's only a matter of time before Al sees where the money is at and just goes, yeah, we're on the Turkey train too. And then when that happens, then we've got one overlord of boxing. We're back to the Don King days. I don't know who was better, but I'm going to enjoy this, because once you've got one guy controlling everything, we should get the fights we want. We may have to pay for them, but so what? And then the next logical step, once he's secured that, is to say, I need control over the zone so I can get some space to do what I want with boxing. Smart man, that Turkey. Really, really smart man. Played this like a boss. Made the money so sweet. Made that money so sweet that the promoters just dropped their trousers and grabbed their ankles. And that's how he took over. Crazy. All that tough talk for years. And it's taken, what, less than 2.5 years for the belts to undo, the trousers to drop, and the ankles to get well and truly grabbed. Can we just speak on Clarissa Shields as well while I'm here? In fact, let's not talk about Clarissa Shields. Yeah, let's not. Because, yeah, I think you guys understand what I'm talking about. We could talk about the Olympics, because as of recording this, and it's Monday, right? It's Monday afternoon. We've had 3 people walk to the ring, and we've had 3 people go home. Like, to the point where they barely slept in the bed. Like, they ordered the mattress toppers. The mattress toppers for they're not even there. Has anyone seen the beds they got in Paris? Oh my God. Right. I can live with the bedstead being made of recyclable materials, aka cardboard, right? Fine. I get that. You know, what do you do after the games? Give it to the homeless? No idea. But they got these mattresses. It's like a 3-piece unit that they've got, and I was like, oh my God, like, they haven't thought this through, have they? That's the most French thing ever. Just style over function. Like, geez. So everyone's buying these mattress toppers, or they're getting hotels. So I think the American women's tennis team just got hotels, because they're like, you can't have 10 women sharing 2 bathrooms. Like, it's chaos. But into all this chaos, the Brits flew in, and they were talking the hardest. They had McCracken talking all this smack and all this, and just going home one by one. Not even Noah's Ark. They're just going out one by one. What's the first one's name? Charlie Davidson, the mum who's had 2 Olympic Games, out in the first round. What was the point in qualifying? Then we had Rosie Eccles, and I was really hoping that Rosie would medal here, and I think that would have been a good validation on her amateur career. She's gone home. And people are going to tell me these two are robberies, yada, yada. They weren't robberies. Honestly, they weren't robberies. If you understand how amateur boxing really works, that's how you lose. Now, I don't want to hear, oh, the point deduction. Like I said, if you understand how amateur boxing works, you can get dropped 3 times in a 3-round fight and win. On God, you can still win. And then Pat Brown, who I also had high hopes for. Lovely kid from all accounts, but not even about being in over your head. It's you didn't have the tactical weapons for the battle. And so we've had 3 enter, we've had 3 leave. That leaves 3 others: Delicious Ori, Lewis Richardson, and Chantel Reed. And 2 of those are real rookies at this level. Chantel Reed I like because she's a lifelong boxer. Her old man, I think he's got Code Red in Derby. So I'm going to back her. I think she's got enough tools and enough of a varied skill set. The other 2 guys, they're just products of the system, so I don't really see how they can win. Like, not even win. Like, I don't see how they can get out the first round, the second round. These guys can't quarterfinal. Not because they're not hard workers or anything. Just the GB system is so broken. Is so broken that we can't win anything. And no one wants to talk about this, right? This might be my last point of the day. I'm not touching Crawford. So this will be my last big point of the day. The problem we've got with our GB system is this. The coaches in our GB system are about 5 years behind what's happening on the ground in the UK. Right? And not only are they 5 years behind, but you basically got granddads coaching. And they coach granddad stuff. And then at the top, you've got McCracken, who's the ultimate fish and chip boxer. And I won't say to disrespect him. He'll tell you that. McCracken survived on being strong and fit and having a good mind. Yeah, his mindset was strong. The same with Richie Woodall. These are not guys you look at and go, yeah, I could watch Richie Woodall fights all day. I could watch a Richie Woodall highlight reel. Like, his commentary should tell you what GB are doing. Staying with range. You know, double up the attacks. Let me stop the accent. But you know what? That short to mid-range nonsense he talks, 2-phase attacks, really, really basic fish and chip stuff. And all they do then, and I call these coaches suits. All they are suits. They're people who comply with the system, don't rock the boat, therefore the thing just chugs along. Which it has done for about 15 years, right? And then they get these young, impressionable coaches and go, well, yeah, you come and be part of it. These twats get the tracksuit and the T-shirt and they think they've made it. And I get it because these guys are getting paid. And for them, getting 50 bags a year is a big deal, right? And I'm like, cool, do your thing. But here's the problem. The engine of our sport is grassroots boxing. The engine of our sport are the grassroots coaches. I watch certain coaches and what they do, and I'm going to just name some young names that I enjoy watching, for example. Well, youngish now, because I've been saying young for a while. Like, I watch someone like a Billy Rumble and the stuff that he does with his fighters, and I think Billy Rumble's class. Like, his boxers have flair. That's why they got Adam Macker up to GB. Like, Billy and his old man Char Sr., man, I love watching what they produce. How that's not a factory for promoters is beyond me, by the way. I think their kids box really well. I just wonder if being in Sittingbourne, you get exposure to those kind of tough Ghanaian skulls that you got to punch in sometimes and understand where the levels are at. And I think that's one of the benefits of being in a big city is that you get to do that. But I look at guys like Billy Rumble. He does his thing. Look at, I'm going to be biased and talk about guys like Linton. because I see what Linton does on a daily basis. Linton Amer at Fitzroy Lodge, similar. Kids have flair. They look good when they box. The same with Sai. You know, Sai's, I mean, because that's how Sai sees boxing. Talk about Miles that changed the game, because I'm sort of getting into that. The guys are Don Davis. There are all these kids that box beautifully. All different styles, but it's flair, and it's like, and they can make it work in any scenario. You go up north, Grant Smith is doing something similar up at Steel City. Glenn Rose has been doing this for years. I see what comes out of Earl Shilton up in Leicestershire. Same thing. Collarhurst and Mostyn, same thing. Everywhere you go in this country, there are these incredible kids that can move and groove and shake and do this. And they can do it at a really high level. It's not like, oh, he just does it against novices. They do it against really top quality fighters. But they don't make it through to the higher levels of our amateur system because those coaches, the suits, the granddads, have no idea how to coach that and go, look, you're giving me about 25 different weapons here that I love. We need to cut out 8 of them for you to win an Olympic gold. Yeah? And then you kind of work out which 8 need to go. But you still keep the essence of that kid. But you don't turn him into a boxing robot and go, if you just do this, you'll be all right. Because then they're lost. And a lot of our boxers in that system are lost. I'm going to keep saying this. The hotbed of this country's boxing is at grassroots level. These trainers I just mentioned are the guys who are producing what matters. Josh Burnham, put Josh Burnham in that mix as well. These are the guys who are producing. No one else. No, let me not say no one else. That's disrespectful. But these are the guys that are producing. And I think in a few years' time, my mate Sean Yearwood will be one of these guys as well when he starts embracing the coaching life. And then maybe him and I will coach together if I go back home. But all of that talent, all of that flair and that skill gets lost at GB. And then you watch the Cubans and you go, but they don't lose their flair. I'm watching the Italians now because I'm like, how have the Italians come through so quick? They don't lose their flair. The French don't lose their flair. Even the Russians don't lose their flair. Because their coaches know how to bring everything up to the requisite level. The same with the Americans. Always interesting how the Americans make better adjustments to the pros. Always interesting how the Eastern Europeans make better adjustments to the pros than Brits do. Because we have 2 completely different systems in our boxing. We have an amateur system and a pro system, right? But the coaches down here are preparing kids to be pros. And then they go up to someone like GB and they strip all of that away. And then the kid finishes with GB and is just confused. Like, what do I do? And I've seen this with my own eyes. They get confused. Whereas I think in America, it's a pretty standard thing. Like, yeah, the skills you have at 15 are the skills you're going to take into the pros. You look at Fernando Vargas's kids. Same way from when they were young. We don't have that in GB. And when people say, bah, look at all the medals we won, we were just outspending people. That was it. We were outspending people and making it full time. And then everyone else went, we're going to spend money and make it full time. Now it's all equal. Yeah. Now it's all equal. And then when all things are equal, now it's about those secret things you got, the secret shots, the little clever shots you've got. I don't think we've had that since Ben Whittaker. And we haven't had it in a sustainable way since Pat McCormack. Guys who can just they can do the basics when they need to, but they know how to turn it up at the right time. We haven't had that in a long time. So the GB system is rotten, right? We've lost 3 people. The best we can hope for is 3 medals. None of those will be gold, by the way. None of those will be gold because you're talking about the Hollywood divisions. Super heavy in the men's, middle in the men's, and middle in the women's. Yeah? That's absolutely insane. We haven't planned for this. And so when we get no medals and our funding collapses, if we don't have a mass campaign for McCracken and Woodall to pack their bags and fuck off, then we failed. Every amateur club right now should be saying we have zero confidence in those guys. And never again, this is a big reform, never again should Team GB be beyond the control of the amateur clubs. Never again. The coaches should be appointed by the clubs. We know who the good coaches are. We should appoint those. And I feel for the kids who have just had to, hit the condom machine and just eat McDonald's now for the next 2 weeks because they're not going to be boxing. Pat Brown, Rosie Eccles and Charlie Davidson. I feel for them because this isn't how it was supposed to end, and they trusted their coaching team. Look, Pat Brown trained by Nigel Travis. Travis's old man, Kelvin, was in charge of the GB thing. That this shouldn't have gone that wrong. Like, you had the cheat code to winning Olympic gold. Kelvin trained orderly. What went wrong? And I'm not going to blame Pat Brown. I think Pat Brown will be a good pro, by the way. And I think Travis trains good amateurs. I'm dubious about him as a pro trainer. Nigel Travis and Moss Side trains damn good amateurs. Our amateurs deserve better than those suits and clowns they got up in Sheffield. And everyone sits there quiet, sucking their thumb, don't they? Because, they don't want to rock the boat. I'm not afraid to say it. Garbage. It's garbage. All from the top all the way down is garbage. Garbage. We overtrain our guys in the wrong things. Fuck you doing sprints for? To do what? To do what? You ain't got no footwork. You're running fast for with no footwork. Do you know what I mean? Can't create new angles. Like, no flair, no imagination, no creativity. Can't improvise. Can't make decisions in the ring. So why are you training 3 times a day, 4 days a week? What's going into those sessions? Yeah, we're going to run. We're going to lift. We're going to do plyometrics. Yeah, look how clever we are as coaches. Yeah, look at us. Yeah. What about the boxing? What about skills? What skills are you working on? None. None. This is why amateur clubs are so important, because they allow boxers to be skillful. And the hurtful thing is, GB don't know how to turn that into success. Our boxing scheme's screwed. Maybe it's best we don't go to the Olympics in 2028. We don't have anything in this cupboard right now. Maybe kids like Adam Macker, Ellis Trowbridge, Leo Atang, all lovely kids. Do I want to see them go through that system? Hell no. They're too good for it. Too talented. System's disgusting, man. And this was the whole thing I was trying to rip down and rebuild. And what did they say? Oh, mate, yeah, we sent your CV over for the CEO role, and they said, hell no. I said, cool. Good luck. But yeah, there's my rant about GB boxing. God, if you stuck through that, I respect you and I love you. This week, Crawford versus Madrimov. Crawford should win that easily. I love watching Crawford giving Eddie Hearn hell. Crawford's just a hard man, isn't he? Doesn't give an inch on anything. And I like that mentality, because that's how you got to be. Just don't give an inch on anything. And always be at that kind of breaking point where if it goes left, you're ready to fight in an instant, but you don't really want to fight, but you're ready to. And he pushes that line all the time with people. And I love that, because people are like, and so he makes bitches out of everybody, because no one's prepared to stand up to him and take it to that place. I love that about Crawford. So I hope Crawford wins. In terms of all that Riyadh season stuff, great. It was good to see Turkey and Oscar together. So the wealth's getting spread around, which makes me happy. What else is happening this week? Zach Chelly versus Callum Simpson. Weirdest fight ever. Like, literally. People are just going to be cheering into the void. Imagine you just stood there in Oakwood, you're just looking at an empty stand, just dark on the other side, just cameras and probably just people milling around. You get to watch the production team just there sipping coffee and Starbucks and whatnot. Jesus, who thought this through? So there are 2 things I don't like about this. Number one, I don't like the setup of the show. Just from that mise-en-scène perspective and how it would look. It's going to look shabby, and you're going to get terrible viewing angles the further out to the sides you go. But the other thing I don't like the fact that the British champion's having to go to Barnsley. And he's having to go to Barnsley because they're backing Simpson to take that belt. And they're trying to build Simpson and not Chelly. And no one can explain to me why. I get this idea we need to have a presence in the North. Sign someone. But don't sacrifice Zach Chelly. A guy who, if Barry can do the things he wants to do up at State of Mind with Zach will be a guy that we will grow to love immensely. Because he's such a nice guy. Like, Zach is such a nice guy. Humble. I mean, you can't give him any nonsense. He's got that Crawford thing there. When you start talking crazy to Zach, Zach's ready for you. So that's what I would say. I don't get it. I think it's bad promotional work. I think you should really be backing Zach. I'm not saying don't back Callum Simpson, but don't cannibalize your stable. Like, this is cannibalizing your stable, and it doesn't make sense. Because if it was just about a fair fight, the champion would fight at home. So, Zach couldn't sell 7,000 tickets. Why not? Why not? Has anyone taught Zach how to sell 7,000 tickets? Has anyone actually sat him down and gone, here's our plan to sell 7,000 tickets? No. But they do it with everyone else. That double standard I don't like. Unfortunately, boxing is how it is. There's not much we can do about it. But look, I thought this was going to be short. It wasn't. Sorry. I want to tap out at this point and say, listen, have a great week. Sorry it's been so long, but there just hasn't been much happening for me to get excited about. So I thought, let me lay low, have a bit of a summer to chill. Everyone else is chilling. You guys hopefully all having a good summer. And hopefully the weather finds you guys well. But nah, thanks for tuning in this far. Look, I love you guys. From an admin perspective, I love the engagement on Instagram on the Q&As. Use that as an opportunity to tap in. Like, how often do you get free game in life? Like, that's free game. If you can get a question in on a Wednesday, that's free game. A lot of you guys are sleeping on it. A lot of you boxers are too proud to ask questions. Your careers are going down the toilet because you ain't asking the right questions. But if you want to fail, fail, man. Not my concern. Whew. Have a great guy. Have a day. I'm brain dead at this point. So have a great day, guys, and take care.
Porky's Corner is proud to be sponsored by Spartan Site Solutions. They are specialists in civil engineering and demolition contracts for the construction industry. Interested parties should visit their website or contact Porky's Corner for a referral at porkycorner@mail.com.